Hello everyone and welcome back for another Brutus Monroe video. Today we're going to be using the December stencil of the month to make some slimline cards, and I'm excited to do that. This is the adorable Roundimal called Penny the Penguin. We're going to use her along with a couple of her friends. And then we also have this die set. This is the Slimline Sentiment die. It's awesome and has all those great layers, layering dies, and then a lot of great sentiments that you could use. Happy birthday, I'm sorry, and thank you. And then we also have some of the Slimline products. These are the pre-cut panels, the bases, and some envelopes. And then we're going to be using some Velveteen glaze. So let's go ahead and get started with our card. So I'm going to tape down my panel. This was one of the pre-cut panels, just using a little bit of purple tape, and then I'll take some pixie spray to my stencil, take that outside, spray the back of that, bring that back in, and then we're just going to kind of line that up. I know that 6x6 stencils typically aren't designed to go on a slimline card, but we're going to make that work because there are some good breaks in this stencil. You see those nice straight lines that give a good break. We're going to use those to our advantage. And yes, Max is extremely interested, but I know since I'm going to be doing some Velveteen glaze, it's probably not the best idea for him or for any of us actually that he be in here with that wet Velveteen glaze. So I'm going to try and get him to go play with his brother for a little bit. I put down some post-it tape just to kind of mask off the top. I find out that that's really not that necessary as long as you're careful. And I did bring in the Stencil pal, which you absolutely could use, but I don't find that it's super necessary. My palette knife works great. And I'm just going to take some of that Velveteen glaze. This is the color Blueberry Bushel. And if you're familiar with it, awesome. It's such a great matte finish product. But if you're not, and you are maybe familiar with, say, Chroma Glaze is a very shiny product. When it dries, it's nice and shiny and just beautiful. And this stuff dries matte, which is super cool. It gives a whole different design, and sometimes that's what you're going for. So that's the Velveteen glaze. I'm going to peel back my stencil. You'll notice I have a little bit of squish through, which really doesn't bother me too much. And then I'm just going to line up the stencil at the top. I'm going to get that same squish through because where it squished through, it actually touched the back of the stencil. So it's going to do the same thing here. And this is where I'm just being careful. I'm going to take my stencil or my palette knife and spread that Blueberry Bushel all over that background, and then take my Stencil pal and squish that away. Take off the excess. So if you don't have a Stencil pal, you could absolutely do this without. This just makes sure that I have a nice even line. And then I'll peel that away, and you'll notice again I have a little bit of that squish, but again, really doesn't bother me too much. I'm going to take all that stuff and clean off my stencil and my background. And then we're going to work on our envelope. So all I'm going to do is take a dye-based ink. This is the Clear Skies by Simon Hurley ink. And I'm just going to take my ergonomic blending brush, the smaller one, and I'm going to blend some of that color just on the lower left hand and the upper right hand corners. And because I'm using a dye-based ink, my stamps will have no issue sticking to that area, so that's something to keep in mind. And part of the reason why I chose the dye-based inks. And so there we have a neat envelope to go with. All right, I'll pull out some Alcohol Perfect cardstock. This is great for alcohol marker coloring. I'm going to cut that down to fit my little Roundimal. Again, her name is Penny the Penguin, and she has a matching die to go with her, which is fabulous. So I'll stick just a piece of that cardstock into my Mini Misty, and then I'm going to ink that up with some Brutus Monroe Raven Detail ink, which is perfect for alcohol marker coloring. So I'll stamp her out a couple of times. She stamps pretty perfectly, actually, the first time, so I don't need to do it again. And then I'll stamp her again, and she does great. And so I'm using two because I want to have something for the inside of my card. So let's go ahead and start our coloring. Typically, I like to go lightest to darkest, but for some reason, when I was doing the inside of her little face, I decided to go with my darker color, which was C3, and then I come in with some C1 and I try to blend it, and I still feel like that's a little bit dark, so I'll keep trying to blend a little more. And then I'm going to come in with some C0, which is a very, very extremely light, cool gray color, but it does a good job of blending. For the rest of her, I'm going to use some C6 to start. This is where I start with my lightest color. And then once I get that all colored out, like I said, I usually like to go lightest to darkest. I feel like that's how I get the best control. I know a lot of people who've been coloring a long time, and I have been coloring quite a long time, tend to like to go darkest to lightest, but I am just one of those that sticks with what I know. I'm even Copic certified, you know, back in the day when they used to do that. So if this is what you do, don't feel bad about it. You don't have to learn the other way. If you're more comfortable going lightest to darkest, just stick with what works best for you. All right, for the eyes, I had to do blue since we used that blue chroma glaze, Velveteen glaze. And so then for her little beak and her feet, we're going to use some YR23, and then we'll come in with a darker shade, which is YR27, just to add a little bit more depth to her. And then we're going to use our matching die to cut her out, both of them. Now I'm pulling out that Slimline Sentiment die. It has shadows and it also cuts out the letters for the words, which is fabulous. And so I'm going to pull in some sterling glitter stock for our background. But before I do that, I do want to dry my Velveteen glaze a little bit. So you could easily set this off to the side and let it dry by itself, you know, just walk away for a while and you'll be fine. But I'm usually always in a hurry, so I'm using my lowest setting on my heat gun. If you don't have 2 settings, you can use the higher setting, but I just recommend that you move your gun around quite a bit, and that way it won't bubble. And maybe hold it away from your paper just a little bit. But yeah, you can heat it and it's great. And you can move on. I have some more white cardstock for one of my circle foundation dies. I want to cut one of those out. Like I said, I used some silver glitter or sterling glitter stock for my background, and now I'm just taking a little bit of purple tape that I've cut in half, and I'm going to stick that onto the front of my words because I noticed they stuck inside the negative piece. And so I thought this might be an interesting way or a fun way to just add these down all at once to that shadow piece. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to poke all of that out so that it's sticking to the purple tape. I'll peel out those insides because we obviously don't want those. So the inside of the D will get popped out, as well as the A and the R. And then I'm just going to take some liquid glue and I'm going to put that all over the letters. So once I put that all over those letters, I'm going to actually just be able to stick that right down to our shadow piece. It works well with the purple tape simply because I can see through it. And I learn even better with the other ones because I make it so that it just goes through the middle of my words, if that makes any sense. So this works fine. It works great as long as you have a good, strong adhesive, because we're putting this over glitter stock. You want to make sure you are using a good, strong adhesive. So this way I can just stick it right down. I don't have to worry about trying to piece each letter on there. And I'll let that set for a second, and then I'll slowly peel away that purple tape. You know, don't do it all at once. This isn't like, you know, pulling the tablecloth out from underneath, you know, the stuff on the table. You do want to take your time and make sure that your letters don't move. And so once that's on there, I'll do that for both. We'll grab out one of our card bases. These measure 7 inches by 8.5 inches, so I'm just going to score this at 3.5 inches. And then I'm going to attach down my panel. I considered doing it this way, but in the end I decided to just turn it so that it's up and down. And then we're going to add some foam tape to the back of our little penguin and all of our letters and words, and then we'll attach down our card panel to our card base using some more of that liquid glue. We already attached down our circle foundation to the front, and then I'm going to attach the other one that I colored to the inside, trying to figure out where I want that, just using a little bit more liquid glue. We'll peel off the release paper on all of our elements. And these are just a simple way to make some fairly quick cards, honestly. And then we'll pop all of our letters down. And then that's going to finish off our card for today. I did go ahead and use Katie the Koala and Hoot the Owl to make a couple cards that matched, just using different colors of Velveteen glaze and just, you know, coming up with some fun cards that all matched. And I now have 3 more happy birthdays to add to my depleted stash. So if you liked this video, go ahead and hit that like button and consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.